Welcome to the Real Estate Marketing Podcast. My name is Jerome Lewis. I'm your host for today. The Real Estate Marketing Podcast is a podcast where we talk marketing, tech, business, and leadership. We talk these things for real estate agents, real estate investors, and real estate entrepreneurs. Real Estate Marketing Podcast is a podcast that has two purposes. Purpose number one, to educate and inform our audience and listeners. Number two, Nick, to spotlight you, your business, your service, or your product in a way that provides value to you, including market exposure and content creation. With that, we have a very special guest, Nick Niehaus. Nick Niehaus is the co-founder and head trainer at Business Video School. He has spent this past 6 years working with thousands of real estate agents to help them overcome the challenges of transitioning to video communication and marketing. In doing so, Nick has become an expert at helping small business owners gain confidence on camera and learn to use video to grow their business. Nick, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, absolutely, Jerome. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, Nick. So we read your professional bio. Can you tell us in your own words a little bit about how you got to where you are, what got you into video, entrepreneurship, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So, entrepreneurship was one of those things where once I knew what it was, which I was probably about 18, 19, when it kind of finally clicked for me when I did this internship, ran a small painting company for a summer. From that point forward, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be self-employed, and I've been kind of doing it ever since. There was a brief stint after college. I worked for about 9 months selling tools at Sears. But other than that, I've been self-employed ever since. So it's it's a little bit of, just being super curious, always liking to have something new to work on. It kind of got me into it, but also just my disdain for having somebody else telling me what to do is probably another reason I was so drawn to it. So I've been working with video specifically for probably getting closer to 7 years at this point. And really just helping small businesses in particular understand, video. We talk a lot about video obviously today, but in a lot of ways it's about efficiency. It's about saving time. It's about, impacting people in the most effective way. And with, more and more big companies kind of putting more and more small businesses under over the years, I think it's a tool that allows us to really build relationships locally in a way that we haven't been able to before, and therefore sort of protect our local small businesses and keep them healthy and keep them thriving. And that's become a big passion of mine over the past few years, especially as I've gotten more established as a business person myself. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And this is going to seem like a very basic question, but I want to ask it just so people kind of understand. So, Nick, can you tell us, I've heard you give this definition before, and I think you explained it pretty well. What is video? Like, what is it? Can you help us understand what it is? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell people video is a form of communication, right? So I'm thinking that's probably where you're going with that. And I think that, that's what a lot of folks, I mean, we see video, take us back 5 years or so, right? I mean, obviously now we know TikTok and YouTube and all these sort of platforms that are completely video centric, and there's a whole generation that's grown up with this stuff now, and it's almost natural for them. Well, you go back not too long ago, and most of the video that most people were seeing was things like television and movies and, sort of high level production and stuff that's being seen by thousands, potentially millions of people. And so I think, for a lot of folks getting into video, they still have that sort of feeling about it, right? It's like, oh, this is a performance and I'm acting, right? We used to have clients that would come in and we make videos with them in the studio, and they're talking about, oh, I don't want my friends and family to think I'm trying to be a big shot, and I'm like, what are you talking about? This is just a better way to communicate with people, right? It's like, would you rather they see a video of you with your face on screen talking to them, where they get that familiarity and they build that intimacy and they really get to know you? Or is that just going to be text on a a Facebook post they have to read through? And those are both valuable, but one is clearly much more impactful and sort of more it moves the relationship forward. I think that's what it's about, right? So I think that to me is the definition. Is this is just it's a new way we talk to each other. The pandemic both accelerated and I think also slowed some of this progress because it forced us to do it. So as opposed to something we kind of gradually got used to over many years. We all had to learn how to get on camera and talk to each other through those cameras over a 2-year period or so. And so, there was a little pushback. I think there was some resistance that came from that. But I'm starting to see now that the sort of general acceptance of like, hey, this is a marketing tool, sure, but it's much bigger, right? This is a new way to talk to each other. I mean, I see parents all the time talking about sending video messages to their kids now and how that's actually helped them make some progress with their kids because they're so much more responsive to it. Multiple people have mentioned that's how they get their kids to take the trash out, is they send them video messages now. So, there's just all these little examples of kind of where it plays a role in day-to-day life. And I think that if you can really understand it as this way we talk to each other, as this form of communication, take away the pressure, make it less about being a performance, find opportunities to use video in sort of very private, intimate, but much lower pressure circumstances, it just opens the floodgates. Because at that point, you get on camera, you start doing stuff, and 6 months later, all those fears, all those qualms, all that confusion around the technology has mostly faded away. And then the public stuff is a lot easier, right? So I think if you think about it that way, it just gets the ball rolling a lot faster.
When you were mentioning text versus video a little bit earlier,
Right.
you said one is more impactful. Tell us which one is more impactful, and then tell us some reasons why it's more impactful.
Yeah, so one of the things about, we invented, kind of going way back thousands and thousands of years ago, right? It's like we invented the written word because we couldn't always be physically present, right? So there was this point in human evolution where we sort of said, look, I want people across town, or I want, my ancestors, my descendants or something, to be able to understand my thoughts. And so we developed, this thing that's very symbolic, these written words on a piece of paper. And obviously it's something you have to learn how to be able to read and write. And that was great, right? That was a huge step forward. But even at the time, most people would have acknowledged, like, this is not the same as having a face-to-face conversation, right? In fact, a lot of times, we talk about people being good or bad writers because, good writers are able to get you to understand more of the emotion that they're trying to portray and things like that. And bad writers really struggle with that. And so that's a problem with text, right? We invented emojis because it's literally so hard to understand the intended emotion behind something that's written down that we had to make little pictures of faces to help each other, interpret what we were trying to say. And I think that just goes to show, that if we created a version of a face to put into written text, that, if we could put our actual face in front of someone, that's obviously going to be better, right? So I think this is, it's one of those things. If you look at science fiction, for many years, we've always had this attitude of like, hey, once I can get to the point where it's just my face on screen and you're watching me talk to you and it feels like a face-to-face conversation, that's going to drastically improve this. And so, the science backs it up. Especially emotional communication. So not just details, right? If I said like, I have a bag of 5 marbles, like if I say that versus write it, you're going to understand there's a bag with 5 marbles in it, right? But if I talk about my emotions, if I try to share how I feel about something, which is a massively important part of any communication we have, right? But especially I work with mostly real estate agents, and this is the most significant financial transaction anybody's going to go through in their lives in most cases. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs, and being able to be empathetic, being able to share that emotional communication is really important. Well, video, they will understand 95% of it, right? So if you're trying to be empathetic or you're trying to be excited, they're going to see it, they're going to get it, they're going to connect with you through that. Text, we understand 10% of that. Now, this has gotten misconstrued and people say, you understand 95% of what you see in a video and only 10% of text. That's not technically true. It's the emotional part of it, but it's very true for the emotional part. And you can see examples of this all the time, right? Like go to Facebook, find a political post and read the comments and watch how sort of angry people tend to get at each other. A lot of times that's just them misunderstanding the other person's intention because it was text. And they've done the research. They've actually had people respond to those posts with a video saying exactly the same thing, word for word, as what they were going to type out. And a lot of the animosity went away, and it's just that difference between, really having to see the person and sort of, your brain can't tell it's a video. Your brain doesn't know what a computer screen is or a camera. These are relatively new inventions. So consciously, yes, but that non-conscious part of your brain, all it knows is, hey, when I see a face, that person must be sitting there in front of me. And if I chose to sit here in front of this person and talk to him, there must be a reason. And so therefore I should take this person seriously. And I should start to internalize the idea that they're my friend, right? So it builds trust, builds familiarity. And so, night and day difference, right? So you see a lot of agents, a lot of business owners, when they make this transition to, hey, I'm not going to eliminate text entirely from how I talk to people, but every now and then I'm going to incorporate a video. So when I get a new lead, I'm going to send them a video message, or I'm going to start posting a couple of videos on social media. And anybody who's ever done that will tell you it drastically changes the way people talk to you. I'll go out in public and go to networking events, which I haven't done as much of in the past few years. and people will come up to me and they'll start talking to me as if we saw each other yesterday. I've gotten used to it. It's disorienting at first, but it's because they've seen my videos. And so they have actually talked to me yesterday. And I mean, talk about making networking a lot easier. I mean, if every time you go out, people in the room are like, hey, it's you. And I just saw your stuff the other day. And they'll bring it up. They'll be like, hey, you made this video about this thing. And I thought that was really cool. Conversations are getting started for you. I mean, it's remarkable, sort of the benefits. So it's probably, more than you're asking for there. But I think it's, night and day difference. And I think once you start to experiment with it, you put aside the fear and you sort of look at the benefit, it's pretty obvious pretty quickly.
Thank you. Can you help us? So one of the things that I appreciate that always stuck with me, you come like teach our classes, is
Sure.
you mentioned this concept on like fusiform gyrus.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Could you talk about, can you help us understand what that is and why that's so important?
Sure. Yeah. And I appreciate you actually remembered the science term. I try not to use too many science terms, but
Yeah.
yeah. So this fusiform gyrus it's a part of your brain that is basically it's very old, right? It's one of the things that's kind of there before we could think consciously, I think. And all it does is it recognizes objects, but there's actually a part of it. It's called the fusiform face area. It's not as sciencey at that point. But that part just recognizes human faces. And what's interesting is there's actually a disorder where this part of your brain doesn't work correctly. In fact, I've heard that Brad Pitt apparently has this disorder. I don't remember the name of it, but it basically means that you cannot recognize other human faces. So you will see people well, and your brain, it won't click in your brain that this person, right? So for those of us that part of our brain works, it's just such a natural part of everyday life that we would never really think about it. But it is pretty instantaneous. So there's this psychological principle called the familiarity principle, and it has to do with this part of your brain because it basically just says, hey, look, the more often you see someone, the more you're going to start to recognize them, the more you will automatically trust them. And I think this comes from if you go back thousands of years again to when our brains were still kind of evolving, and it's like, look, if you're out hunting and you look across the field and you see another person, you need instantaneously to be able to recognize, hey, is this somebody I know? Have I seen them before? Therefore, I know what to expect. I can trust them, all that kind of stuff. Or is it a total stranger, in which case they might be about to throw a spear at me, right? So it's a very much survivalistic kind of part of our instinctive, response. And so it can work. It can obviously work both ways to some degree. But when we just see that person, as soon as their face shows up in front of us, I mean, it's a split second, right? That gets stored. Now we will recognize them again. This happens in day-to-day life all the time. You're at the store. Hey, I know that guy. I was at a co-working space the other day, and this guy and I were kind of both doing this, and neither of us remembered each other's names. I mean, they were long gone. I was talking years, but we're both like, we know each other. We knew we knew each other. We knew we'd probably seen each other multiple times. Nothing else. There's nothing else was left, right? So, I mean, that's this stuff sticks. Like this is, I mean, it's substantially easier to remember a face than it is to remember a name. And so, yeah. So anyway, that's kind of getting deep into it, but that's what's really cool about this stuff. And it works with pictures too, so putting pictures of yourself out there can have some of that effect, but especially when you're hearing that person, when their face is moving, it's just that whole other level, right? Because your brain has a very hard time believing that it's anything other than that person sitting there right in front of you, and this is why we have such strong relationships. I mean, it's kind of scary. I mean, nowadays you look at some of the fandom out there and it's like turning into like cults, like some of these people are such huge fans of, these musicians or sports stars or politicians, it's like they're their best friend or something, or a family member. And it's because of video, I mean, it's because of this sort of super intimate level of familiarity. If you watch many, many, many hours of somebody on camera, you're going to have a level of affection for them that really isn't reasonable, So I think that's where some of the negative starts to happen, right? We start to have some of these people that it's almost like we're worshiping them with the way we act towards them at this point. So that's the bad side, I think. But on the positive side, as a business owner, that means, hey, if I can get out in front of people, if I can put my face in front of them, I'm going to have, a loyal customer base. I have people coming back to me. I have people passing me referrals, which is also where the threat comes in, right? Because if you're in a local market and some of your competitors start to do these things, they become better known to your prospective customers, So I think for a lot of agents right now, they might be looking at the market and they're going, yeah, I mean, the market might be down by this percent, but I'm down even further. And I think that's the question they should be asking is like, there's a very high likelihood some of your local competition has started to use this new form of communication, and they're just simply building relationships with more people faster and stronger than you can because you're avoiding the most effective way to do it. And I think if you can just be aware of that, kind of wake up to it a little bit, then you just start using it, and you might turn your year around in a few months because it is that powerful.
Thank you. So while you were talking about like the effects, the positives and negatives, there's a story that you share. There's two phrases I'm trying to think of. We got one, parasocial, and then we got two. You always use the example of I think Robin Williams. Could you explain that to our audience really quickly, like the parasocial and the effect? Why people were attached to
Sure.
Robin Williams.
Yeah, well, I mean, parasocial relationship, just comes back to kind of what I was talking about earlier, which is, this sense of, basically feeling like you really know somebody. So it happens with celebrities, and I tell the story of when Robin Williams passed away and kind of how much that affected me at the time. And I sort of remember pausing and sitting down and reading this article and, thinking to myself like, oh my God, Robin Williams is dead. And it was weird because I'm like, well, I'm a fan. I like his movies and whatnot, but like I hadn't watched any recently and I've never met him. It wasn't like I had a personal relationship. That kind of got the ball rolling for me in some ways of sort of studying this stuff and trying to understand, like, why would I feel that way? Because it was not obvious, so anyway, so I dug in. And then, it became very clear to me that look, this is a byproduct of having watched his movies, especially as a kid, So I, again, had not seen Robin Williams movies in probably a few years before I found out about that. And it was really looking back at, like, I would go over to my grandparents and hanging out with my cousins and stuff. And we're watching Mrs. Doubtfire, we're watching Jumanji. And those two in particular just sort of immediately came to mind when I dug in a little harder. I'm like, well, that's it. I must have seen each of those movies at least 10 times. So, when that was happening, I mean, what the reality is, like, our brain, again, doesn't understand that we're not there, right? I mean, that's what's fun about movies, right? If it's a good movie, you get sucked into it, you become a part of the experience. I mean, your brain really thinks it's happening, which is why it's enjoyable, but it also means that your brain will leave that experience thinking, hey, I just had a really fun time hanging out with Robin Williams, and again, not conscious, right? But it's happening. And I think that's where these parasocial relationships form, right? So the definition of a parasocial relationship is that it's one-sided. Only one of the people knows the other even exists. Celebrities literally have to condition themselves to understand this. So that's why, you'll see different versions of it, but somebody tries to, ask a celebrity for a picture, and some of them are very nice and they'll let random people come up and put their arm around them and all this kind of stuff, right? And others are a little more like, hey, leave me alone. Well, all of them are having the same experience, which is that a complete 100% stranger walked up to them, basically accosted them and put their arm around them. I mean, like, think for the average person, like, how strange that experience would be. But because of parasocial relationships, celebrities, they just learn that's how it works. These people, in their minds, like, they really, really know me. And I have to kind of pretend like I know them a little bit. I got to smile. I got to shake their hand or give them a hug. And then, then they won't go out and badmouth me and say I'm mean to my fans, right? But that's kind of crazy stuff. And it's getting to a point that, every year there's more video content. There's more people who are using these tools to build their influence. And what's a little scary about it in my mind is that, on the one hand, traditional celebrities, movie stars, sports stars, all this, like, they go through training on this stuff, right? They go through, they go through processes where they learn, like, hey, what does this responsibility mean? What does it mean if millions of people will hang on your every word? How do you take that responsibly? How do you make sure you're saying stuff that's not potentially dangerous? Now we have all these thousands and thousands of influencers who have similar levels of fame and, accolades and, or this sort of attention paid to them. And I don't think they're getting that training, so you see a lot of folks kind of saying things and putting things out there. And I'm always just a little bit like, man, that I understand to the right people that might be a supportive thing you're saying. And then to the wrong people, that might be a really dangerous thing you're saying. So it's getting a little bit off topic of the parasocial relationships, but I do think, it's worth remembering, especially when you're looking at your kids, if you have them, and kind of how they're following these people and the kind of relationships they have, understanding what that is, and even just reminding ourselves or the people that we love that, hey, this is great. You can be a fan. Just remember, they don't know you. This is not a real thing. And you need to go out and have those real relationships. You got to have the friends where there's two sides to that relationship, not just, influencers and famous people you follow, right? So it goes both ways. I think we pay attention to it. It doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing.
Got you. And that all happens because of video. You become known because
Yeah.
people start to know you through video.
I mean, yeah, and it can happen through other means, right? I mean, it's not video is the only way to build parasocial relationships, but it is substantially faster. And I think that's a big thing we've seen change here, right? So, and it's same thing even with the big time celebrities. We went from seeing them in movies, maybe seeing an interview now and then, to now they have social media too. So they're posting these behind the scenes videos. They're posting just so much more of that content. So even those relationships have gotten a lot more intense, and it's like you see sometimes these legal battles of people being in court and, fighting over whatever it might be. I mean, sometimes, if it was people sound kind of terrible, it sounds like they were treating each other really poorly. And instead you've got like diehard supporters on one side arguing that their person is perfect and they did nothing wrong. And same thing happened on the other side. And, a lot of vitriol, a lot of people getting angry with each other. And it's just like, these are strangers. Like, why do you care? You really shouldn't. This is strangers. It's their personal business, but they've catered that, right? I mean, I was watching a clip the other day and it was a couple of celebrities talking about like, what are their fan bases called? Because they all have nicknames now. Everybody's the fan of this actor, that actor. Like they had to have a nickname for their, and I'm just like, man, these all sound a lot like cults. That's kind of how cults work. So it's a bit of a personal pet peeve of mine, I guess. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So help us understand, right? I want you to help us understand the proper mindset, right? Because a lot of this is like mindset. Once you have the right mindset, the actual practicality of doing it, it's like not as difficult. So can you help us understand the right mindset we should have when it comes to like using video to communicate or grow our business?
Yeah, so there's kind of two things there, I would say. One is, mindset wise, the mindset just needs to be that you're helping people. I mean, you gotta take yourself out of the equation entirely. Because the reality is someone watching a video of you versus somebody, meeting you at a networking event, shaking your hand and talking to you for a few minutes, it's no different, right? So if you're doing those sorts of things, you're getting out there, you're meeting people, you're being your friendly self, whatever that is, video is the same thing, right? So number one on the mindset side, it's just think about, hey, I'm helping other individuals. Maybe you're sending individual video messages to, I mean, like I love to tell people start with happy birthday video messages, very low pressure. Only one person's going to see it. It's a message being sent directly to them. It's not a post on their public wall or anything like that. And if you're just thinking, hey, I just want to make this person's day, I want to, wish them happy birthday, hope they have a great time. That's not a high pressure scenario, right? Like you're going to do that because you want to be a nice person. So that's I think in the mindset side of it, that's what really helped me. Now on the other hand, though, I do think you need a mindset, but mindset only takes you so far. And I think sometimes people get kind of too focused on it because what I've seen a lot is basically usually it involves a third party. So there's somebody who thinks they should be making video. There's another person who's made some video. And what happens is they come to this first person, they say, look, just do it, right? You just got to have the right mindset. Just think about the people you're helping. You might say something like I just did, but you just got to do it, right? And that might work for some folks, but a lot of times this first person gets stuck because they're still in that place of, yeah, but this is intimidating and I don't feel confident and all this kind of stuff. So I think there's also a lot to be said for analyzing what it is that you're trying to do and asking yourself if that is the right place to start. I think the society we live in nowadays is all about getting there as fast as possible. So I think a lot of people think they're just going to start making video and all of a sudden a few weeks later, it's going to be easy and natural and, an organic thing for them. And I tell you from firsthand experience, I'm sure you'd agree too, right? It's like, this is a years long journey. I mean, you're going to continue learning how to do this. You're going to continue to get better at it the more you practice. It is I mean, I've done this for almost 7 years now. I've made thousands of videos and there are still kinds of videos I get intimidated for. There's still some sort of stuff I drag my feet on. It's never going to go away entirely, right? So you got to understand it's going to be a journey. And then if you accept that, you can start in a place that is much more straightforward, right? So like back to the happy birthday video messages, do that, look at the impact from it, start super simple, take the pressure off of yourself. Nobody's asking you to go dance on TikTok on day one, or ever. You may not need to do the social media video if you're doing a good enough job of staying in touch with your core sphere of influence through video messages. I mean, that's what's really wild here is we are so focused on just sort of the biggest impact stuff. So the guy who has 1 million followers on YouTube and gets all his business from that, that's great. And if you want that too, go figure out where he started, not what he's doing today, right? And then try to be more efficient, try to skip some of the mistakes that that person might have made along that route. But that's it, right? You start back at the beginning, you start simple, and then you kind of move along. So if your focus is on helping people, and then you can also sort of readjust and say, look, where can I start that just doesn't feel that hard? You know, the wanting to help people will move you forward. It'll motivate you. That's where the mindset comes in. But then the repetition, like I'm a big fan of habits, right? So it's like I want to get to a point where sending people video messages is so natural and normal that I just do it. I don't have to work up to it at all anymore. I just, hey, oh, it's the one guy's birthday. Cool. Boom. You know, hey, happy birthday. Have a great day. Send. Done. That is what I always aim for, right? So if I can get to the point where that becomes a habit, that is a simple thing that gives me that momentum, that consistency, then I can build on that, right? So now I can say, well, I'm going to send my birthday videos, but I'm also going to do one lead conversion video, or I'm going to do something just a little bit more elaborate, continue kind of adding every month, try something just a little bit harder. And, 6 months, a year later, which is a decent chunk of time, but all of a sudden, you're doing things that you've quite honestly been putting off for 3 or 4 years, So I always try to compare it to like, how long have you been putting this thing off? How long have you been procrastinating? You should probably be willing to give it at least that much time for it to really work, right? So that's what's kind of what I'd focus on, right? But if you're thinking about helping other people, it's always easier, right?
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you, well, like, what the next thing I was going to ask you is how to do it, like, practically. But you've given us, like, just low pressure. Tell someone happy birthday in their inbox. It doesn't have to be a grand production. Fair.
And it shouldn't, right? I mean, because that kind of thing is, it'd be weird if it's highly produced, right? I mean, if you're saying happy birthday to somebody, it should just feel like you called them and said happy birthday for a minute or two. So, yeah, I think tactics wise, I mean, that's what I always tell people is I've got plenty of advice, about good lighting, audio, how I mean, I've got a fancy colored light behind me for goodness sakes, right? Like obviously you can do things to kind of increase your production value. But at the same time, like that should all be earned. And you should always start with something that requires none of that because it's not necessary, right? I mean, I really want someone to be working on just sort of one thing at a time. That's a lesson I took even from, I mean, heck, back to that internship painting houses when I first got started. Is like that was one thing we always learned is like, look, if you try to improve multiple things at once, you will make no progress. If you focus on just one thing at a time, and then you work on the next thing only when you've made the progress with the first one, that actually sticks, right? So with this, it's like, look, you start so simple that the only thing you're thinking about is just saying happy birthday, just being nice, smiling, right? Just that kind of stuff. And they're not going to care as long as you record yourself and they can see your face to some degree and they can hear your voice. Like that's it. They're going to be appreciative. They're going to say thank you. You're going to probably pull some business over time from that because you're just going to be top of mind with a lot more people. And I'm a big believer in, look, once you get a result, it makes it substantially easier to keep moving forward, right? Once you get that first deal that comes from somebody that you sent a happy birthday video message to a few weeks earlier, you're going to go, okay, I'm bought in now. And that becomes then the momentum that I think helps you kind of take the harder steps.
Thank you. Nick, you help people with this using like Business Video School. You do classes. You come to our class at least twice a month. Can you tell us a little bit about Business Video School and how people can get access and use some of those resources?
Of course. Yeah. So, Business Video School, I think the thing that to really understand here is this is a complete solution specifically for video, so we're not going to teach you every aspect of how to run a successful business, but this is a comprehensive training program for using video in your business. So when I say that, I mean, we have 9 different courses that start from, making a simple video with just a phone and no other equipment, all the way up to having, elaborate videos on YouTube and running Facebook, video funnels, the whole 9 yards, so to speak. We have weekly work sessions. This is a relatively new thing we started doing, but for accountability purposes, we literally just show up and everybody works on whatever project they have in front of them. So some of our students will make an entire video in that 1 hour, including posting it publicly, which is great. those folks are a little more established, right? So the people that are a little bit newer might be sending video messages for an hour, or they might just be sitting there and taking one of the classes because they haven't been accountable to doing that for a couple weeks. But those we've gotten tremendous feedback on. People love that because it keeps them focused and accountable. And then we have video recipes too. So we have literally about 180 at this point. It's a script for a video. It's an example of the video we make so our students can sort of emulate what we do. Step-by-step instructions. We got some video editing templates. We got some graphics that we can provide for those. So there's a couple other things we do, challenges we run every month, stuff like that. But I think the main point is if you are not making the kind of progress that you want to with video, you will in business video school. And I think that it's very flexible, right? So if you're just getting started and you need to take one little step at a time, we're there for you. If you're much more established and you just need to be accountable to making your content every single week, we're there for you too, right? So that's the idea behind the school. It's $97 a month. We do offer annual memberships. You can save a little bit of money there if you'd like to. There's no contract, so it's come and go as you please, just like a subscription with Netflix or something like that. And then we're also, this is probably the big thing at the moment, is we're actually offering a limited time free trial. So don't normally do that, but through August 15th, there is a free trial available. It gives a potential student access to literally everything we offer. And there is no credit card required. So it's no strings attached. We just want to show you what we can do. And we just ask that, hey, if you like it and you enjoy it and you feel like it is helping you make progress, you stick with us. Because integrating video into your business is a hugely important thing to do right now, right? So, not everybody needs help. If you're doing this on your own and you didn't need any support, great. But if you do and you're dragging your feet or you've been procrastinating potentially, I mean, that's who we're here to help for sure.
Okay. How can we get access to that? Like, is there a website, link, anything we should visit to?
Yeah. So if you go to bizvideoschool.com, that's BIZ videoschool.com, you can check us out. I do believe we have at least through August 15th, we'll have some information about the free trial on the website. You can also find us on social media. If you just search for Business Video School, we're on all the major platforms. And if you have any trouble finding the free trial or getting signed up, I also invite people to just follow me on social. So in particular, let's say LinkedIn or Facebook is a great place to connect with me. So my last name is Niehaus, Niehaus, if you're looking for me. But yeah, any of those places would be great to connect.
Nick, could you share with us like 2 of your favorite success stories people that have come through business video school, like your favorite stories, like this one
Sure.
stood out to me because of this and this one because of that?
Yeah, so I'll give you a sort of simple and a more complex one. So the simple one is back to the happy birthday video messages. We had a student, Tina, got a $3.2 million listing. Most of our students are realtors. 4 weeks after she'd sent someone a happy birthday video message, and I just thought that was and we dug in. We're like, look, was there something else you were doing? What And she's like, well, it's somebody I've known before. They're in my database, but that's why they called me, because they were like, hey, thanks for reaching out a month ago for my birthday. I wanted to talk to you about selling this house. And to me, what's so cool about that is it just goes to show the power of being top of mind, right? I think it's we always want to make marketing complicated, and we want to do all have all these fancy bells and whistles, and all that really matters in marketing is just that when someone thinks about needing your product or service, in this case, when they first think about needing to move, you're the face that pops into their head, right? And then they'll figure out the name and how they know you and all that from there. But that's the key, right? It's just that top of mind awareness. I love that. I mean, it's a huge commission for her, obviously a big time success, but just from a single happy birthday video, right? So that's pretty straightforward. Now, another story that I really like is I'll talk about Sheila for a second. So, Sheila was at one point working with her coach, who really wanted her to be doing more cold calling, and she just wasn't feeling it. Wasn't her thing to do, made her uncomfortable. And so she said, look, I am not going to do that, but I am going to start making a video every single week. And to be clear, she was doing some cold calling, right? They just wanted her to do like 2 hours a day. Well, she said, I'm going to do this for 6 months. And if after 6 months, I'm able to basically replace what I was doing with my cold calling or my other lead gen, then that's it. I'm just going to continue down that path. And so within about 3 months, she had very little results, but she was getting views and people were starting to engage with her videos. But by the end of 6, she had fully replaced all of her other marketing. So she just stopped doing anything else she was doing, including the cold calls. And I think her coach was sort of shocked by this. But she never looked back, and she's continued to grow her business ever since. And my favorite part of that is that these are not, I love her videos, but they're not complicated. These are not super high level production. This isn't something where she's got a fancy set or anything like that. It's just her giving real estate advice, and she just makes sure to do it, and it's consistent. And I think that, marketing wise, like that's what really matters here. And if you're going to get into video, I mean, these rules definitely still apply. But if you think about what that does in the minds of those people who are watching her, it means every single week she's showing up in front of them. She's sharing useful advice. She's sharing her expertise and sort of, indicating what she does for a living. And whenever they're ready, they're going to reach out to her because she has that omnipresence, right? So it's marketing. It's very tempting to try to get in front of lots of people. I think it's much more effective if we get in front of the same small core group of people over and over and over again. And I think that video does that really well, because once somebody sees you and they like what they see, they're going to engage with those videos again in the future, right? So those are probably two stories. There's obviously a lot of other ones, but those are two of my favorite.
Thank you for sharing. I have a proposal for you, right? I
Sure.
told you, like, when you came to our class, like, I just published a book, right? Like, how to turn videos into money fast. And inside of there, like, I have like trying to put together some case studies. And I would be happy if you, like the one you just shared, Tina or Sheila, I'd be happy to throw those in there and credit you, so people can see those success stories and see how, like, it doesn't have to be complicated. So
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. I mean, we have
okay.
all kinds of different case studies I'd be happy to share. But yeah, and I agree with that. I think the simple ones are my favorite, right? I mean, we can
Okay.
talk all day about this complex YouTube strategy, and those things are great too. But yeah, I mean, when it's as simple as just talking into a camera and sharing your expertise and doing it on a regular basis, I mean, those kind of things most people can do that, which is why it's exciting, right?
All right. So these are questions, like, these are selfish questions, right? I ask these so I can figure
Sure.
out a way where, like, if people want to reach out to my guests, they have a reason to reach out to them, but it's also so I can figure out how I can best serve my guests as well. So first question, how can someone bring immediate value to you or your business?
Well, I mean, the big thing right now is, so I'll say this: I'm always looking for opportunities to teach, to
Okay.
present. So if you're looking for a speaker in an event, or if you're looking for somebody especially to come into like I speak to a lot of chambers of commerce, a lot of real estate offices, mortgage offices, things like that. Definitely love the opportunity. And then the big thing is, I mean, this is the first time we're doing a free trial, so we just haven't done this before. It's a little bit nerve wracking for us because we're opening the doors to really hundreds of people right now. But that's the other thing, is just helping us spread the word. If it's something you could benefit from, if you're watching this and you want to sign up for it, great. But if you know somebody in particular, it's really perfect for that person who's been talking about video and not doing anything, right? So the one that's saying, yeah, I gotta make more video, I gotta start doing this, or maybe they made one 6 months ago and haven't done it again. Those are the people we love to help, right? Because that's exactly the spot to be in when you come into the school. So if you heard anybody saying things like that, just send them our way and tell them to come check out our free trial.
Next question is very similar. How can someone add long-term value to you or your business?
Well, I mean, we're starting to look for more partnerships. That's
Mhm.
something we didn't really have the capacity for until more recently. We added a couple employees to help us out with that. So partnerships is a big one. We're looking for opportunities to trade emails. So if you've got a list of people that, especially real estate agents or small business owners, that you would be willing to kind of do a trade, we can do some promotion on their part, and then they promote us. That's great. And then, just partnerships in general. So I think right now we're at a point where there's a lot of businesses where they want their customers to be using video. Maybe they sell a tool that incorporates video, or using video reinforces what that company does, especially marketing companies, things like that. It's a great fit for us to come in and basically educate your customer base for free. So there's different ways we can go about doing that. But that would be long term. That's an opportunity we're definitely looking for, is other businesses with similar audiences that want to do some trading in terms of email promotion or educational events.
Okay. This one. What are 3 books that you would recommend to the audience and why?
Oh man, books. Okay, let's see here. Some that kind of come to mind right now. Good to Great is a classic. That one is all about the difference between successful companies and, like, the legendary companies, and kind of what differentiates them. that kind of stuff obviously is more useful if you're in a big time corporation, but I think small businesses can learn a lot from those kinds of insights. Blue Ocean Strategy is one. Again, it's kind of more of a startup oriented book, but I'm definitely a fan of that. And then let me see here. I might have to think on the third one for just a second. Trying to think if I've read any good ones on video lately, but there's not that many books about video that I'm a fan of, unfortunately. I'll give you those two for now.
Okay, perfect. I'll accept it. If there was one question, what is one question you wish I had asked you, and how would you have answered?
Well, I mean, yes, you already asked a lot of great questions. I guess one thing I will say is I think people need to be a little bit more afraid at this point. And I'm not trying to make it into fear-based sort of stuff, but there is a certain degree at this point where video was a nice to have, right? It was kind of a, hey, there's a few people differentiating themselves, or some people kind of distinguishing themselves. As soon as the market slowed down, right? And it didn't crash, right? We're not at a point where there's nothing happening, but total real estate transactions went down pretty significantly. There's always this moment where you kind of want to think that you're in the same boat as everybody else. And then you look around and you go, well, but some of these teams haven't slowed down, and some of these top agents don't seem to be doing any less business. And I'm down more than the market apparently slowed down. What's going on? And I think if there's any chance you're in those kinds of situations, and it's kind of a negative spin, but now we're getting to the point where you have to really look yourself in the mirror and say, like, could it be that I'm just not getting in front of people in the way that they expect me to, right? This is, I think, the difference in just the past 6 to 12 months that I've seen is that video is becoming it's going from being a luxury to being a necessity, And so I ask these questions all the time, like, hey, are you starting to get video messages from any of the businesses that you use? One there was a gentleman the other day said, hey, I got a video message from my mechanic. And I was like, well, if mechanics are starting to send video messages, real estate agents better be sending video messages, right? And so that I think we're getting there. And I think this becomes something where if you've built this up in your head and it's become this sort of behemoth, this mountain that you have to climb and overcome, you gotta step back from that. You got to put that away. You got to make this less about being a performance and more about being a customer service tool. And you have to start taking action, right? So, I mean, I don't know if the question there is how much. I guess the question would be sort of like, how much of a threat might this be to businesses as well? And so I think, anyway, so that we covered that to a large degree. So I don't think we really missed it, but I do think that's where there will be one more thing I'd emphasize is just you gotta start to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself if you're just trying to do what you've done before, but you're not getting the results you used to anymore. And yeah, it's gonna come down to the people that are willing to be a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, that's always the case when things are good. Everybody gets to eat. Everybody gets their market share because there's just plenty to go around for everybody. And when things get tight, the folks that are not prepared, that aren't willing to kind of do something different, the longer they wait, the harder that gets, and the more significant that jump is going to be. So, if you're feeling that and you're kind of in that position where things aren't going as well as they were, it's just time to be honest, right? And I do think, I don't think video is always the answer. There are certain people where there's other things that they need to be focused on, but it's often the answer, and it's going to kind of continue to be for the next few years. And then, who knows, maybe it'll be VR, or we'll be dealing with AI agents that we have to compete with or something, right? I mean, there's always something new around the corner. But yeah, that would be the thing to really, really understand for now.
Tell us again how we can learn more about Business Video School and how we can get access to those resources.
So bizvideoschool.com is our website. That's definitely the best place to go in terms of like, I mentioned the free trial, but we also have like a whole bunch of different freebies on our site. So you can get access to some downloadables, some checklists, some guides. We have a mini course you can access there. But realistically, I mean, just search for Business Video School. We'll show up on Google as well. And check out the free trial, because I mean, that's something that, realistically, come in, take 1 or 2 classes, come to a couple work sessions, make your first video and just see what it does in your business. And if you need more help beyond that, continue with us. If not, then great. We're happy to help where we can.
Okay, thank you, Nick. And if you could close us out, like some podcast guests leave like with a closing statement. I like to do one word. If you could close us out with one word, what word would that be?
One word. I mean, communication.
Communication. All right.
Yeah,
I
communication.
appreciate that. Thank you. So Nick, this has been excellent. I'm going to close us out, and I want you to sit here so we can wrap this up. So thank you so much for your time, Nick. I really appreciate you. This went like fast. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on, Jerome.
Absolutely.